How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and as you see, we're back at it, breaking down all the latest in Mets land. And in our second video here on the platform, this time dropping October 13th, 2025, but our previous one in similarity to free agent topics was 2 weeks ago, breaking down way too early targets for the New York Mets, and that included free agent and trade options. Fast forward a couple weeks later, and we're talking about not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but 10 free agent targets for the New York Mets this offseason with a really fun twist. All the following players that we're going to break down have ties to active Mets rivals to varying degrees as they are pending free agents for their respective clubs. So we're going to get into who exactly these players are, why they may versus may not make sense for this Mets team. Who do you guys think is most likely to land in Queens out of the 10 players that we break down versus least likely? Let me know in the comments down below as you hit that like and subscribe button as you guys first chime in for being amazing supporters, as you always are. And shout out to our amazing sponsors that make every single show here happen, that being at SeatGeek, that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs. So head over there to SeatGeek and utilize my promo code WARDY10 because you're going to get 10% off the next ticket purchase that you have, whether that's for NHL tickets, comedy show tickets, concert show tickets, NFL, you name it. SeatGeek, the #1 rated ticketing app in the game today for a reason, has you covered, as well as Mantis Sleep, because if you go to mantisleep.com for the best sleep masks in the game today, use my promo code WARDY, that is WARDY, and you're going to get 10% off those masks in particular. Check them out, everybody, but we'll break them down more later on in this video. Now, folks, let's let it rip and let's get into, and really no overly particular order from 10 to 1. I like to make that clear, guys, in case you're going to argue and say, Wardy, why is this guy at 8 and this guy at 3? It doesn't make sense. This guy's so much better. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, one, but secondly, this is a soft ranking of 1 through 10. Just focus on the players and less about where exactly they are here in the video. But starting here, everybody, at number 10, we're going to have a sneaky one, and that's Derek Law, the veteran right-handed reliever for the Washington Nationals. The lone National that we have in today's video, because Law in his age 35 season may have just had his best season yet. With a home run per 9, the lowest it's been since his rookie season in 2016 of just .70, and a whopping 90 innings pitched by Law in just over 70 games for the Nationals in various circumstances and situations. A Nationals team that needed innings eater in their bullpen most certainly got that. And Law this year posted a 2.6 ERA and a 3.69 expected ERA. And what did the Mets not have last year? It was stability in their rotation. It was stability in their bullpen and not getting enough guys that can truly eat quality innings for them. And Law gives off all the makings and the ability to be that kind of guy who knows how handle the NL East, how to win in the NL East, and a guy who can handle any circumstance for the most part fine. I think Law has all the makings to be a kind of guy that will not blow you away like a Ryan Stanek, but will certainly bring you more upside than what Ryan Stanek did this past season. And with only guys like Brooks Raley and Huascar Brosban and a couple others under contract for this Mets bullpen heading in next season, are they going to consider in-house options? Absolutely. That's where the Ryan Lamberts of the world, the Dylan Rosses, etc. come to mind. But externally, we know this team's going to add. You know David Stearns, whether you love it or not, is going to get creative. Do not be surprised if Derek Law falls on their radar. I think he actually makes an abundance of reasons of sense, and I think he's going to absolutely be quiet in this year's market, which is where a guy like David Stearns can do what he typically does and try to pounce on that opportunity. Let me know, guys, if you're for or against Derek Law, the veteran right-hander for the Washington Nationals, in the comments down below. Is now going on from talking about the Law, let's get into number 9 here, and that's Michael Kopech. And I'm going to tell you right now, I like Michael Kopech as a fit more than I do Derek Law, and it has more so to do with the tremendous upside Kopech has when healthy than anything else, because Law was right around a 7 strikeouts per 9 to 2.4 walks per 9 this year. Kopech, when right, is an absolute flamethrower machine, and he broke out on the scene for the Dodgers in 2024 that we saw, helping them win the World Series and just have themselves nothing short of an absolutely impressive run. And what I love so much about Kopech is the fact that when this man is healthy, we saw the way that he dominated last year for those LA Dodgers in their playoff run, surpassing our beloved New York Mets, as Kopech was initially part of that 3-team trade with the St. Louis Cardinals as well as the Chicago White Sox. Kopech was coming over from Chicago. We saw Tommy Edman come over there from, how ironic, the highlights that you're about to see here, before he was on the Dodgers there facing Will Smith. But you had Kopech coming from the White Sox. You had Eric Fetty going from the White Sox to the Cardinals. It was a slam dunk, huge win trade for the Dodgers with Tommy Edman and Kopech more than anyone else. Kopech missed the majority of the season due to injury because of a shoulder impingement that had him out on the shelf the whole first half of the year, and then the second half was a knee injury. So it all comes down to health with Kopech, but one right, an absolute flamethrower who has championship experience, who knows exactly what it takes to win it all, like he did with the Dodgers, is an active free agent, and knowing how fickle the Dodgers are when it comes to their pitching every year, there is not a guarantee that Kopech is necessarily going to return to this Dodgers squad. So bearing that in mind, do not be at all surprised if the Mets nip at the heels of one Michael Kopech and the upside that he has, because Kopech throughout his career has been a little up and down, transitioning initially as a starter, reliever, but now as a full-time reliever, one of the more moxie, high-octane pitchers, touching a hundo on the gun that you guys see. This is the kind of guy that fits the Ryan Stanek mold 10 times over of a high-leverage, flame-throwing right-handed option in your bullpen that can help you down the stretch, potentially greater than, say, a Huascar Brosnan among others. The bar is fairly low for the Mets right now, so it comes down to health with Kopech, but one right, this guy is absolutely disgusting. So let me know, guys, if you're for or against Michael Kopech in the comments down below. Because now to go on from Michael, everybody, at number 9, let's get on to number 8 here on our list, and that is going to be Marcell Ozuna. I know. You don't need to tell me twice. Wardy, what are you smoking? Why in God's name are we talking about Marcell Ozuna today? And you're right. There usually isn't a valid reason to talk about Marcell Ozuna other than the fact that he's Marcell Ozuna from the Braves. And we're going to joke about that. We're going to continue to joke about that because that is what Ozuna is through and through. But what we know Marcell Ozuna to be is a true standalone DH. And what has this Mets team lacked in recent years? It has been exactly that. It has been that DH position. And that is where Ozuna would provide stability, something that they have not had in recent years. Now, do I think the Mets should go out of their way for Marcell Ozuna? No. The only reason why I'm talking about him today is because, one, he fit the mold of the video as a rival free agent option. And secondly, a guy who would fit an ultimate team need for this team right away, especially if they do trade someone in Mark Vientos, among others. Again, am I saying it's a lock that the Mets are going to have themselves Marcell Ozuna? No, by no means is that the case. And you could even make the argument that they're not even going to dabble in that market much because of the fact of how much of a defensive liability he is. But what I can tell you is that Marcell Ozuna is one that one right will be averaging anywhere from 30 to 35 to 40 home runs a season. He's coming off of back-to-back years in 2023 and 2024 when right around 40 home runs and a locked and low in Braves lineup. It's not surprising that even in a walk year, Ozuna didn't step up as much because he didn't have nearly as potent of an offense around him. If he was in this Mets lineup with a Pete Alonso reunion and for Ozuna to be your everyday DH, that would automatically make this team better on the power front than what they currently are. Do I think it needs to be prioritized? No. All I'm doing is talking about Ozuna because he's a free agent, and yes, I know that he's a guy that we love to rag on more than we even think about the idea of him being a New York Met. So take this with a heavy grain of salt when we talk about Marcell Ozuna. Just a power hitter that the Mets look for power down the stretch in DH this offseason after maybe missing on a Kyle Schwarber. Maybe things don't go right with Pete Alonso. Given those uncertainties, you have to keep the doors open to all power options, and in a year where the power hasn't been there all that much when looking at the free agent market beyond Alonso and Schwarber, Ozuna does fall in that category. So let me know, guys, how much you're for or against Marcell Ozuna of the Braves becoming a New York Met. Now going on from Ozuna, let's get on to a far more realistic option at number 7, and that's former New York Yankee reliever, potentially now going to be a New York Met, and Luke Weaver. Now, for those that do not know Luke Weaver, let me enlighten you, because Weaver has had some ups and downs the past couple years with the New York Yankees, but one right is one of the better relievers that we've seen in all the American League. And I like Weaver for a couple reasons, but one, you look at the connections that he actively has right now with Desi Driscoll, where if Desi does stay in the Mets organization, for those that are unaware, Desi is actively the Mets assistant pitching coach, but that may change given Jeremy Hefner being part of it. But Desi was coming over from the Yankees organization, who has plenty of familiarity with Luke Weaver, and Weaver is coming off of a season where even with his ups and downs, still posted a 3.6 ERA, a sub-3 expected ERA, a starter turn reliever, because we all know that this is the makings of a guy that can be very good at the major league level, but really doesn't have the stuff to be great as a starter, unless the Mets want the Clay Holmes route with him, and I don't want them to do that. I think Weaver is absolutely destined to do great things still as a reliever in today's game. And Weaver coming over as a crosstown rival makes plenty of sense and reason, because not only have the Mets seen him firsthand, not only does Mendoza know him well during his time as a New York Yankee bench boss, but Weaver has really blossomed the past couple of years to show his ability as what I think we could all agree would be a nice mid to high leverage option at times for this Mets bullpen, whether he would be coming in the 6th, 7th, and or 8th inning. Obviously not your closer option, because that's what you're hoping to lock down Edwin Diaz for again, but in those other areas, Luke Weaver Weaver does make a multitude of reasons of sense. So let me know, guys, if you're for or against Luke Weaver in the comments down below when talking about reliever options. Because speaking of relievers, let's go on from Weaver, and now let's get on here, everybody, to, yes, Mr. Devin Williams, the other reliever option. Now, Weaver, I did want to mention one final thing, and 84 innings with the Yankees in 2024 at a 2.89 ERA, a 3.3 expected ERA, and sat right around 10 to 11 K per nine, so sub 3 walks per nine each of the past couple seasons. The home run rate is what needs to come down for Weaver, which we hope we could see in more of a pitcher's ballpark at Citi Field half a season than clearly a batter's ballpark half a year there in the Bronx with those Yankees. But now Devin Williams, you guys might get a kick out of this one, but I'm telling you, there is more proof in the pudding with Devin Williams than maybe what you initially think, because Williams was looking like an absolute madman, very scared of his own shadow in the first couple months as a New York Yankee. You know, obviously Pete Alonso's homer did him dirty going back to the 2024 wild card, and he hadn't been the same, and he was moved out of the closer spot because of that. But Devin fluctuating as a setup man and as a closer among other roles for the Yankees this year was pretty solid, all things considered. 67 innings, 62 innings, a 4.79 ERA. That's not pretty on paper, but all the expected numbers tell you how much bad luck he had as a New York Yankee. A 3.07 expected ERA, a 2.67 SI ERA, a 1.13 whip, a 2.68 FIP, 90 strikeouts, one of the best changeups in the game. We know this with Williams. He would do wonders in this Mets bullpen. And I'm not exaggerating as I say that. I say that in confidence as someone who knows that Devin Williams has been consistently one of the best relievers in baseball for a while now. Why should we write him off? Oh, just because he had himself a little bit of an inflated number there that we saw with the New York Yankees on the baseline ERA? We all know by now in today's game, heading into 2026, that production is so much more than your baseline ERA. If you base everything just off of ERA, you're never going to make proper decisions as an organization. I'm not saying that his expected FIP is nice, because it isn't. There are some things I don't love about Devin Williams' numbers this year, but what I do love is that Williams, again, a .73 home run per nine. The home run rate has stayed low, has stayed sub 1 since his rookie year in 2019 with the Brewers in a very limited sample size. He averaged 13 strikeouts per nine to 3.5 walks per nine. That's a fantastic K to walk ratio. A guy who averages 13 to 15 strikeouts per nine every single season. An absolute horse that would be in the case of this Mets bullpen. Kind of crazy knowing that there's a role where Devin Williams could be a New York Met next year where Pete Alonso isn't. Kind of bizarre, I agree, but do we all agree that Devin Williams makes sense as a potential high leverage option in his bullpen? I agree, and I think that you guys could probably agree with that as well, bearing in mind, as I mentioned earlier, the lack of high upside the Mets currently have in their bullpen. They have a lot of question marks. They have a lot of young, exciting, high upside rookies for sure, but given that uncertainty, the Mets need stability. Devin Williams, even with all the woes they had for the Yankees, getting that off and out of his steam a little bit now that he's been in the New York market for a full year, it would be better with the New York Mets, I think, than it would be the Yankees when looking at the spotlight to a degree, as well as maybe just a little bit less pressure. Maybe not. Maybe it's more, depending on how you view things, given how bad things went for the Mets this past season. Either way, the Mets need bullpen help. Devin Williams checks off those boxes, and he, like his buddy Luke Weaver, are pending free agents for the New York Yankees. So now, guys, going on to number 5 in today's video, we have, yes, you guessed it, we are going to get into Dylan Cease. Now, Dylan is a guy that we have talked about on the platform easily each of the past 2.5, 3 seasons now. And the reason why I personally am enamored with someone like Cease is because the Mets need stability in the rotation. It's as simple as that. And while Cease didn't have himself a solid limited playoff start this year that we saw against his former Cubs, Cease is one of these guys that when you talk to Padres fans, they say Cease is the best, worst pitcher imaginable. And only Padres fans have been saying this, but I understand the point of view. Because again, 170 innings just under this past year in 32 games, right around 4.55 ERA, but a 3.46 expected ERA. The expected numbers are far more favorable than the baseline ERA. You can tell that Cease had some bad luck this year, and he's a workhorse through and through. This is not just a guy that has one absolutely right Cy Young caliber upside. You have a guy that has ridiculous velocity on the gun. You have a man with one of the best breaking balls in the game when he utilizes it to his advantage. He has pitched at minimum 165 innings each of the past 4 or 5 years now, going back to his 2021 campaign with the Chicago White Sox. And something that I've noticed with Cease, who sat right around 11 and 12 strikeouts per nine each season, to right around a walk rate of 3.8 this year, so a little high, but the year prior was 3.09, and did have a home run rate just over 1 this year, so that's something he'd like to get down. For Cease, it's not about questioning his ability as a top 3 starter in this rotation, because that is automatically what he would be for this Mets team, but rather his ability to not only stay consistent, but also his demands on the contract length. Because if you guys think that David Stearns is going to roll out the red carpet and give a long-term contract to a veteran starter who's already at the age of 30 and this year's free agent market are right around, then I got a bridge to sell you, because we got to see it to believe it. Stearns does not at all operate in that fashion, nor does it really make sense. As much as I like Dylan Cease, do I want Dylan Cease at 7 years? No, thank you. There are so many things I'd rather prefer than a Dylan Cease at, say, a 6-7 year contract, and similarity like a Max Fried who got 8 of over 200 this past offseason. So Cease is rightfully so going to be looking for the bag, but if the Mets can find something creative with Cease where you have some opt-outs, you know, maybe more player favorable or mutual opt-outs, whatever the case may be, to throw him some high AAV over the next 3-4 years, I would absolutely love that. Is that realistic? Not entirely sure. All depends on the market that Cease will be having away here shortly. A lot of people speculate that a guy like Dylan Cease is going to be signing with a team like the Atlanta Braves, as he grew up, you know, more in that connection with the Braves and certainly the Mets. But the Braves are very fickle on their willingness to spend each year. How much changes are they going to make this offseason? It'll be fascinating to find out. But guys, I definitely want to know your thoughts on if you're for or against Dylan Cease, because the 4.55 ERA is not pretty, I understand. But this is a guy who sits right around a 3.8 career ERA, had a 3.4 ERA last year, a 3.3 expected ERA. He's had a worse expected numbers going back to 2023 with the White Sox than he had this past year with the Padres. So I understand the pros and the cons of Dylan Cease, but do I also understand the Mets' dire need of an ace-caliber starter to pair with a Noel McLean and others in this rotation? Yes. So for all those reasons, do not be surprised when you hear Cease's name inevitably connected yet again here to the New York Mets now, guys. Now, guys, we're going to get into the top 4 in today's video, but before we do exactly that, listen, Mets fans, as much as I love making content for you guys, something that can definitely be a struggle is getting proper sleep at night, especially when I'm working late to give you guys content to drop in the AM. I'm just hoping to get some semblance of sleep, but unfortunately that doesn't happen at the times I want it to, because the sunlight is constantly poking in my eyes when I'm just trying to sleep in maybe an extra hour or two. Well, folks, no longer is that the issue, and I'm very grateful to announce our amazing sponsor in the platform, that being that Manta Sleep Mask, everybody, because I've been repping their sleep mask for a number of years now since I've worked with them in the past, and they have been an absolute game changer. When it comes to getting comfortable sleep at night, look no further. As long as you have your Manta Mask, you're going to be good to go. What I mean by this, everybody, just take a look. This is the Manta Mask Pro that I've been using for literally 2.5 to 3 years now. I use this as much as possible almost every single night. I kid you not, I had a bad sleep 2 nights ago because I left it downstairs and I didn't have it in my bedroom. So I usually wake up and kind of keep it on my head because it's comfortable for me personally for my first couple hours. I know I'm a weirdo, but that's okay. But not only do I love the fact that their technology makes it so easy to have no sunlight whatsoever getting in your face when you're repping these, but their cups that you guys see back here, you can take them off and you can properly adjust them any which way that is best for you and your face alignment. So when it comes to comfortability, there's nothing even close to as good as what I've experienced with our great friends here at Manta Mask. And as you guys can head over to mantasleep.com, check out their products for yourself, because they don't just have the Sleep Mask Pro that I'm currently repping that helps so much, not only the comfortability, especially when I'm sleeping on my side. Other ones are just way too bulky when I've used other products separate from Manta, but they have been a game changer. And as you guys can see, they have a plethora of options, not just their current Pro Mask that you guys see right there that I currently have. They also have the Sound Mask Next Gen, which gets raving reviews because I'm one of those guys that needs fan noise at night to sleep. And when I'm doing road trips especially, or let's just take it back a couple years ago when I visited my buddy Borna out in San Diego, I need a good, nice, comfortable sleep. He gave me his sound mask to utilize when I was sleeping on his couch, and I slept like a baby because I was just running a fan noise that, again, is Bluetooth, mind you, in that mask, and is so comfortable, not a problem, and it even has some weight to it, which I personally like there to get a nice sleep. You also have the Silk Mask here, their normal sleep mask as well, and the list goes on and on. They have ones for kids. They have a weighted mask that you guys can see down here. They have a cooling mask if you want your face to be a little bit cool at night. Maybe it's the contrary, you want a steam mask for your face. So all in all, when it comes to sleep mask, our great friends at Manta Sleep have you covered, everybody. So do yourself a favor, save some dollars on your next purchase with our great friends at Manta Sleep by simply heading over to mantasleep.com and utilizing our promo code WARDY. That way you too are going to be getting 10% off your purchase. Shout out to Manta Sleep, as always, for being an amazing sponsor on the platform. Alrighty, folks, let's now get on to number 4 here, and that is, yes, Trent Grisham. Grisham is one of the players that we talked about previously in our video, which was on the way too early targets for the New York Mets this offseason. And trust me when I say I'm not trying to pry every single pending free agent away from the Yankees, but at the same time, I know that most of their pending free agents would actively improve this Mets team heading into 2026. So, Yankee fans, run with this all you want and say, oh, little bro wants these guys again. It's really not that. It's just more so you have talented players or active free agents that actually check off many boxes for the Mets. And Trent Grisham, I think, is honestly one of the sneakiest guys the Mets could find themselves going heavily after this offseason. Here's why. Grisham's coming off of a career season with the New York Yankees on the home run front. We look at the RBIs, 235 average, 348 on base, 464 slug, a 3.2 WAR, roughly 30% above league average. Took complete advantage of that short porch to right field. But what I love about Grisham is a couple things. But one of the obvious ones is how dire need the Mets are in for a center fielder like Trent Grisham. Because while I firmly believe, I'm very bullish that someone like Carson Bench can come in and be that outfielder that we need him to be shortly into next season, Mets top outfield prospect, there's still a lot of uncertainty there as to how well he's going to adjust the major league level when the Mets inevitably give him the call. And given that uncertainty, knowing how far a Tyrone Taylor can carry you, knowing how useless a Jose Siri was, who's no longer part of the organization as he is actively a free agent now, tells you that the Mets are in prime position to add to this outfield for center field help right now. And Grisham, who provides both offensive and defensive help, no doubt about it, had himself a tremendous season, and I think would thrive in similarity in this Mets lineup. Not to necessarily the same degree as having a back-to-back 30 home run year, but even if Grisham goes back to being more of, like, say, a 20-25 home run guy with 65 RBIs or so, putting up a similar slash line, who's complaining about that out of center field by the Mets this year? You're not. Grisham can play all outfield positions. He could do it at a very strong rate for you. Yes, he fluctuates a little bit, but he's versatile, and that's important. A nice lefty bat that can be added in a lineup with Juan Soto, among others, and it would be fitting to have the reunion with Juan Soto, because we just talked about Dylan Cease, the Padre. Let's talk about another former Padre now in Grisham, as Grisham and Soto were traded together there that we saw to the New York Yankees 2 off seasons ago or so, or maybe 3 off seasons now. I can't believe how long it's been. All I'm trying to say is Trent Grisham, if the Mets are looking to add outfield help this offseason, there's a lot of reasons to believe that they will most certainly look to add for center field in particular to help give them a cushion and higher upside over what they currently have. Because if Bench doesn't work out next year for whatever reason, then you have a glaring hole of center field for a 3rd consecutive year there under David Stearns. I think the Mets would like to avoid that. They would like to improve defense while adding offense at the same time. Look no further than the Bronx Bomber this past year in Trent Grisham. And Trent feels like the kind of player that very well could be parted with and maybe take a little bit of an overpay elsewhere, because if the Yankees are going to prioritize certain players this year in the free agent class, I think we can all agree that if there's someone that probably is maybe a little bit bigger of a priority for them as of now, and I could be wrong by this, and that is his teammate that we're going to break down here, and Cody Bellinger, because Cody Bellinger is another man who I think does make a level of sense for this Mets team. But for the Yankees, they would be foolish not to bring Belly back. And the only reason why I'm not showing Yankee highlights is because out of all the highlight montages I found, I could not find one of him in a Yankee uniform. So I apologize. This is his 2024 highlights, but you'll deal with it. Point stands, Cody Bellinger, great year for the Yankees, obviously. 29 home runs, 98 RBIs, 272, 334, 480 clip. 5 WAR season, 125 WRC plus. A lot to like about Cody Bellinger, who can play the infield and the outfield for you. And knowing the uncertainty with Pete Alonso in particular, this is what makes Bellinger so attractive, because Bellinger improves your defense tremendously. If he's your first base option, he's going to more than likely be a better first base defender than Alonso, even with Alonso fluctuating with his play. Outfield, Bellinger can play any aspect of the outfield for you on the back of his hand without a problem. If David Stearns wants to continue to amplify the importance of versatility while making sure you don't lose defense at the same time, look no further than Cody Bellinger. Is coming off of a great year, roughly 5 WAR season, 125 WRC plus. You know, Yankee fans this season were saying Belly's better than Soto. What if Soto and Belly are on the same team and there's nothing you could do about it, right? I'm not saying it's a lock to happen. All I'm saying is Bellinger is absolutely going to be on the radar for this Mets team, because he may honestly make more sense for the Mets depending on how they go about their outfield infield, and defensive configuration when evaluating DH as well, than say what they currently have. They just want to run it back with Alonso. Do I want the Mets to prioritize Bellinger over Alonso? No, I do not. All I'm saying is Bellinger makes plenty of reasons as to why he could be a fit for this Mets team, so do not be surprised when you find those two connections continue to find themselves in hand. Yankee fans aren't going to love this, but I'm all in favor of loving whatever is going to make this team better than what they were in 2025. If a Cody Bellinger pursuit falls in that category, so be it. Let's make it happen. Now, guys, going on from Belly and those bombs, let me know if you're for or against guys like Trent Grisham, Cody Bellinger, more former New York Yankees, because when we speak of home runs, there's one man who trumps all in this year's free agent class, and that is you guess it, Kyle Schwarber. And Kyle Schwarber is one of these guys I really think is not a lock for the Mets, but rather, given Alonso's uncertainty, Schwarber very well could be someone that they view as potentially a greater fit for them than Alonso, and here's why. Schwarber is a defensive liability, so that in itself should have you saying, why would Stearns even consider someone like him? Well, if there's anything we've learned about the universal DH for the Mets since it was implemented back in 2022, is that the Mets have done zero to take advantage of it for the better. Mets have been one of the worst teams with their DH in all of the National League since it became universal. And that is not a surprise when you bear in mind their continued idiotic ways to prioritize splitting based on, left-handed, right-handed pitching and inconsistent players. This rotation, this revolving door that continues at DH has not benefited this Mets team, has most certainly been a liability for them. So while Schwarber cannot defend at all to save his life, that he's a guy you want at DH through and through. You don't want him in the corner outfield, and that's fine. But Kyle's a guy who's coming off of a career season, a walk year for those Phillies, where there's a great reality that he does not return looking for that big bag. 56 home runs, 132 RBIs. We know firsthand the power Schwarber had and did against this Mets team time and time again each of the past 4 years. The Mets missed the mark by signing Starling Marte instead of Schwarber all those off seasons ago. It is what it is now. Point stands, Schwarber would make this lineup greater than what it currently is. He will not help you defensively, but that's not what you're looking for in Schwarber. You're just looking to add the biggest bat in the market. And knowing that Schwarber is the biggest home run bat in this year's free agent market is exactly why it will not be for a lack of effort by many teams to try to sign the coveted left-handed hitting slugger. And if you add Schwarber at, say, DH, and added, say, a more defensive-minded Ryan O'Hearn at first base, I can stomach that if that is the reality and how the Mets may move on from Pete Alonso. I love Pete to death. I do not want him to go anywhere, and I want him to truthfully be more of this team's DH than first base moving forward. But if that stubbornness holds true at all with Alonso, and if he really is looking for a long-term bag, then that may very well happen elsewhere. Whereas Schwarber, even with the great year he had, is entering his age 33 season, is coming off of a 4-year, $80 million contract. Anthony Santander at DH got 5 years, right around 90 last year. Schwarber's gonna, I'd imagine, anywhere looking between 1 and 200 on the millions, depending on the amount of years and the AV he wants. But Schwarber's gonna be looking in that AV range, I'm sure, similar to Alonso, of 25, 30 mil plus AV a year, and that is most certainly worth it just on the bat alone. But for the Mets, if they really do heavily prioritize Schwarber, they just have to make sure that it does not come at the cost of hurting themselves in other defensive areas more than what they have in years past building this roster at this point. Because if there's one thing that's so vital about Kyle Schwarber that I cannot amplify enough, that home run power will make and break a lot. And we know that he combined with Trey Turner and Bryce Harper to combine 1 for 14 in that elimination game in extras to the Dodgers in this year's NLDS. So by all means, Schwarber can carry as far as he can, but if he doesn't step up in those big games, it means nothing. But without Kyle Schwarber, the Phillies don't even probably win a single game in this year's playoff run, as he had 2 home runs himself in Game 3 against those Dodgers in LA and the NLDS. So Schwarber, who helped heavily carry this Phillies offense in a year where Harper is not as good as Schwarber. No one is as good as Schwarber in that Phillies lineup this year. That's why he's going to get MVP votes. For all those reasons, Kyle Schwarber, bring him down to Flushing, Queens. Let's change the narrative. Let's pry him away from Philadelphia, which is those Phillies, and let's make him an absolute bomber in this Mets lineup for years to come. All in hand and contingent with what happens with Alonso and what the Mets plan to do to really prioritize team defense. But last but not least, everybody, at number 1 in today's video, we have another Philadelphia Philly, and one who I've been honestly a solid fan of for the past 3 years at least, and that is Ranger Suarez. Ranger Suarez is not the sexiest name when we evaluate free agent options, but he honestly might be one of the best names for the Mets to consider, depending on how many years he's looking to command this offseason. Now, to suggest that Schwarber, Suarez, Suarez, JT Realmuto, all the big pending free agents for the Phillies will not return, I think is kind of silly. But the notion that they will all return, I think is silly at the same time. The Phillies have won nothing with this core group over the past 4 years. Why would they run it back? And Suarez, who's averaged right around, 150 innings each of the past 4 seasons going back to 2022, and has sat right around at 8.5 to 9 K per nine to a steady right around 2 to 2.5 walks per nine each of the past 3 years. Suarez has been nails, and he's been that true guy that will give you 5, 6, 7 innings every single time out there. And what I love about Suarez is not only his dominance in the NL East and has obviously been a playoff performer in the past, but Suarez is one of these guys that would just bring so much stability to this rotation right away. And that's where I hope and pray that he's not looking for a max-free contract, because if he is, then it ain't happening. But if we could land him in similarity to, as I mentioned with Dylan Cease, for example, 3-4 year range with some creative opt-outs, plus incentives for guys to do well. Suarez knows exactly the pros and the cons of this Mets team, but he also knows how much Steve Cohen is willing to spend. And the Mets aren't going to at all spend in this year's free agent market for starting pitching, hopefully not long-term, but more that middle-level term. If there's a reality where you can get him on a high AV here, look no further than Ranger Suarez. He is a guy that I think checks off a lot of boxes for this team right now. You could pair him with Noah McLean, hopefully get a bounce back here from Sean Manaea, but you don't have to rely on Sean to necessarily be the guy. If you don't trade David Pearson, he's part of that mix looking to bounce back after what was a brutal second half. Kodai Senga, massive question mark. A lot of question marks for this rotation, even with currently having 8 pitchers under contract heading into next year. The Mets are more than likely going to add this rotation. They may dabble heavily in the trade market more than the free agent market, because the trade market may have more to their liking that we discussed in previous content for guys that are controllable, younger, some higher upside. But Suarez knows what it takes to win, understands the big markets well, and certainly understands how he would perform at Citi Field in Flushing, Queens for these New York Mets. So Mets fans, let me know if you guys are for or against the pursuits of Kyle Schwarber, Ranger Suarez, and these Philadelphia Phillies. But that is going to do it for our top 10 breakdown today, everybody, on free agent targets coming from rival clubs. You could say I use the rival label loosely by having the Padres in here, but at the same time, we kind of hate the Padres going back to the 2022 wild card. And it's always been a battle against those Padres because we have been 2 of the better teams in the National League in recent years. So with that exception, everything else is pretty much holding true. We have the crosstown rivalry with the Yankees. We got the Nationals. Just because they suck right now doesn't change the fact that they're a rival, the Philadelphia Phillies. And crazy enough, how the Miami Marlins are young? They didn't have an active pending free agent. Otherwise, I would have maybe considered talking about one of them. They were so young. Every single player on their team was like a rookie this year outside of aspects of the rotation for the most part. It's bananas. But that's all I got for you guys for today's breakdown. Let me know which players out of the 10 that we got into do you think make most sense or are most likely to land here with the Mets versus ones you think are least likely make little to no sense, if at all. Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down below, everybody. Thank you guys so much again for hitting that like and subscribe on your way out, and be on the lookout for more continued Mets content here all off season long on the WardyNYM platform. And as always, no matter what, everybody, let's go Mets. Peace out.